welcome back to Pradeep Chats. Today I'm joined by the lovely Jessica Kumar. She is the co-founder, host, and author of the Invisible India podcast. So thank you so much for joining me, Jessica, today. It's great to kind of get some of your experiences and wisdom about life in India, and some of the things you experienced, being a foreigner in India as well, which is something that, we probably all have to experience too. So yeah, just a little bit of background about you, I suppose, for people watching who don't know, your podcast. It's Invisible India on YouTube, Spotify, Instagram, with your husband Abhishek, and you guys talk a lot about your life in India, breaking stereotypes as you were talking about, and raising kids multiculturally as well. So all things that really interesting, and just excited to get chatting to you. I do apologize in advance if these are questions that I'm sure you've answered in podcasts before and do your own, but you don't mind. Just for people who don't know about you, what was it that made you guys want to move to India? You were living in the States, and you made this decision to uproot your lives to India. What was that deciding factor for you guys?
Well, there were a lot of deciding factors. For us, I had actually lived in India as a single person when I was in my early 20s, and I was living in a small city north of Delhi. And in that time, I was, working and just really got very interested in India. My dad's an international business person, so I had always thought that I would end up overseas working, but I just never realized it would be India. I thought it would be somewhere more in like East Asia, like Korea or China or some Japan, somewhere kind of fancy. Not to say India is not fancy. India has its fancy sides for sure, but I always thought it would be somewhere like that. But yeah, I lived there, and at that time I was able to do an immersion course where I learned fluent Hindi, and I got involved with some community development efforts that were going on, and just really got to know so many incredible people and families in the city where I was living. So my intention was that I really felt that I wanted to live in India for the long term.
Yeah.
I went back to the States, and I met this wonderful guy from Bihar named Abhishek, who was doing his master's degree in Indiana, which is in the Midwest. I'm from Chicago. He was living in Indiana. It's a very similar, place. So Midwestern culture. So he had been immersed in my culture, and I had been immersed in, North Indian culture, whereas similar to where he grew up. So when we met and basically got married, and which is the whole story in of itself, but I'll answer your question specifically, is that we really felt that he's the only son. His sister lives in Canada. His parents are in India. So we felt that, really they're our responsibility. And they had visited us several times in Chicago, for our son's birth and for our son's different rituals like the Namkaran and the Mundan and things like this. We had all those things, and they had come for everything. It was hard. We could see how hard it was for them. And we both felt like moving back to India was something we were open to doing, even from the beginning of our relationship. So we kind of started the conversation. And at one point we went to visit, and we ended up meeting some people that we knew through a mutual connection who had started this really wonderful NGO, nonprofit organization. Yeah. And they basically invited us to come work with them. So it was a several-year process of all these things coming together. The parents' health, we had our first child. We really wanted to have our child engage in Indian culture and kind of understand, what it meant to be Indian. I wanted and continue to, utilize my skills. Abhishek has some interesting skills and background too, which he felt that thousands of people are lining up for my job in the US, but nobody is lining up. Very few people are wanting to do the kind of nonprofit work that I want to do, and also take care of my parents. That's my job. So basically that all of those things combined are what really set that decision in motion.
Yeah, cool. And that's definitely kind of, when I think about the reasons we want to move to India, it's quite similar actually in a way. you know,
Hmm.
to be close with his parents. He hasn't got to see his parents in a few years now. So, you know, to get to be with them and spend time with them
Hmm.
as they're getting older. And as well, you know, when you talk about the nonprofit organization, you know, things like this is really what we kind of want to do. Similar things actually, to kind of, I guess, to live a life of like giving, as opposed to, I don't know, would you call, say in India, that there's a slower pace of life? And this kind of
Oh,
value in,
well,
yeah, well, not for everywhere, but
yeah,
yeah, good.
yes and no. Yes and no. So I would say it very much depends regionally where you are. If you're in Delhi, if you're in Mumbai, and you're in Bangalore, you're in Pune, no, you're gonna have the same like chaotic, crazy. You know, your phone's gonna be like ringing all the time. People are gonna be coming to your door, you know, on a regular basis. Um, you know, you're gonna be sitting in traffic for 2 hours a day. That's going to be part of your life if you're an urban center. If you're in a village, it's going to be a different experience. But we're somewhere in the middle. We don't live in a large city, but we live in a medium size. We have about 3 million people, which is small for India. That's not a large city. So there's definitely that slow pace of life. When it comes to social things, I think that things can be more flexible, I would say. I wouldn't say slow, but it would be like a flexible.
Yeah.
Sometimes as a Westerner, it makes me crazy because of the amount of flexibility. There's too much flexibility.
Yeah.
Where sometimes things don't get done because it's like, हाँ ठीक है कल हो जाएगा ये कल करेंगे कल आइए हाँ बाद में भी कर सकते हैं होली के बाद. It's like there's always like, oh, do it after this or then, and then
Yeah.
Holi comes and goes and then it never happens, and then अच्छा ठीक है गर्मी छुट्टी के बाद after the, you know, summer holiday, and you're like, oh no. So
Depends.
it depends on your stance.
Right.
If you're a person that likes a lot of structure and very black and white, it can be very hard to adjust to the pace of life. But if you're a person that can kind of go with the flow and is more flexible, and that would be my like take on the pace of life question, if that makes sense.
Yeah, completely.
Then it would be easier to adjust. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think as well, just the community aspect, do you think that there's a difference in your life in the US and then the kind of community and local feel you have living in Bihar? And you know, I think that's something that really draws me to it, you know, to want to move there for that reason.
Yeah, that's definitely there. It's kind of funny because in the US, if I go to the gym, right? I'll be going to the same gym for 5-6 years, just for example. There'll be people that I see every day. I'll never talk to them.
Yeah.
I'll never, you know, it's just like I might talk to 2 people in the whole time, like the whole time. It's just the gym is not a place to meet people. My gym here, it's kind of an understanding that you become friends with the people that you go to the gym with. It's like, oh, we're all in the gym together. And so all of a sudden you start getting these Facebook requests from people that go to the gym. I never told them what my name was, but they asked other people, oh, that's Jessica. That's a, you know, they asked other people who she was, who was that girl, and blah, blah, blah. And then we talked once, or I said hi to them once, and then we added on Facebook. And then I see them around, or, you know, of course people are, this is changing a lot in the urban settings, but there's still this sense of, you know, coming over to people's homes and things like that. That still exists to some extent.
Yeah.
In at least where we are in Bihar. So the social aspect, there's definitely kind of this sense of belonging in the community. If you're in the neighborhood with other people, that definitely has that feel of chalo आइए चाय पीने के लिए आइए कभी dinner पे आइए. You know, people are just come to your house and, you know, bring you sweets on the holidays. That definitely happens. So again, in the big cities, not as much. You know, in the smaller towns like this, that definitely can occur. So I like that. Although the Westerner in me still struggles sometimes with scheduling with people. Right. So I'll say, oh, you know, on next Tuesday, can we get together at 7 p.m.? Yeah. And then that day, it's, you know, the day before I'll remind, and then that day itself, they'll cancel, you know, my friend will cancel. Oh, something came up. It's like, yeah, okay. But if I plan that day with them, hey, are you free today at 7? they don't get a better response sometimes. So it's just kind of like, you just have to be
easygoing,
very flexible. Yeah.
Yeah, great. And another question I had is, when you first moved, obviously you've been back and forth to India before you moved kind of indefinitely, but how did you feel accepted or not accepted? What were some of the kind of positive or negative experiences you had from the community or locals? How did you kind of immerse yourself in the culture to show that, like, this is your home and that you're not just visiting and, part of the community?
Well, I think that being married to an Indian helped a lot in the sense that my husband, in a sense, is like he's still quite Indian in the sense that a lot of the aspects of life about living here are still very important to him. So I think for me to like engage in the community and everything, that was pretty important to him and to my in-laws. So I think for me, I'm also really outgoing. So for me personally, it was easy just to get to know people and make friends. But even if someone is more introverted and just wants to get to know 2 or 3 close neighbors or friends, I think people see that, and I think it's just a general posture of leaning in. I don't think you have to be fluent in the language. I don't think you have to be doing all of these things in the community to really connect. But I think that just the general posture of wanting to learn and wanting to connect can be really, people see that. People see that you're genuine, and they just want to invite you. And this is the one thing that I always notice, and which I think is so incredible about India, is people are so invitational.
Right.
They want you to be a part of the community. People want you to help you like adopt Indian culture in a way.
Yeah.
So that's a tricky thing sometimes, because sometimes you're not sure, like, am I stepping out of my place here, or is this weird if I'm doing this or that? So but people want you to be a part of the community, and if you go with flow with that, I think there's always going to be opportunities to connect with others. And so I would say that, I think. And the second thing I would say about that actually is, if you have either, like in your case or my case, where we have a partner that is Indian or who's from that place that you're considering living in, having someone to back you up is really crucial. So sometimes when we were initially moved back to India, I think some people would kind of question, "Aapki bahu gadi chalati hai?" Like, your daughter-in-law drives a car, and like, you let her do that. And just my in-laws saying, "Hey, wo 20-25 saalon se chala rahi hai." Like, she's been driving a car for like 25 years. Like, we don't need to worry.
Yeah.
The fact that they've seen me in other environments, and they've seen that they were willing to back me up. I think that calms people down a bit of what other people are saying. But if you have in-laws or a husband that gets affected easily by what other people are saying, and they're like, start to question you, I think that's where things can get a little tricky. And but just having someone to back you up as a foreigner, I think, has made all the difference to me.
Yeah, of course. So moving to India, you obviously, and I think before you'd already kind of adopted the culture before moving there, of course, but you obviously want to immerse yourself in the culture fully. How did you, or how do you, remain kind of true to yourself still, and still, being American and still keeping that identity? Did you find it a bit of a struggle to kind of balance those, or does it just come naturally, do you feel?
Oh, that's a great question. And I think people assume that, people make some assumptions about that process, and it's different for everyone. Some people have really good boundaries and self-awareness from the beginning, and some people go through a more messy journey. Mine, I think, has been a more messy journey. When I first moved, I was, 23 years old. So I was quite young and quite fresh out of college. Uh, and I felt definitely a lot of pressure to, become Indian, which no one can ever really become Indian if you're not Indian, but just that sense of needing to adapt. And I think that was a healthy and a good thing to pursue at that time too, because I wanted to be able to do my job well, and survive and thrive in this community where I was living. So learning the language and cooperating when people would try to correct certain things about me. I remember going to a birthday party once, and I used to wear my hair kind of like, I guess this was the early 2000s, so I used to wear it like kind of crunchy. I would wear like it was kind of like messy curls, and I used to wear it. And so I remember one woman coming over on my birthday, and she took a brush and she put me in front of the mirror and started brushing out my
Wow.
like, yeah, isn't it chini lag rahi hai? You're not looking really nice like that. She started brushing my so like whipping me into conformity with what looked good, So I was like, I didn't know, and I said, no, leave it. And I finally like, no, छोड़ दीजिए, मुझे ऐसे पसंद है. I like it, my hair like this. And so that's one small example of feeling like my hair is different from Indian hair, and I think that's okay, but people didn't want it to be like that. They wanted to look the right way. So what do I let slide there? I already was wearing Indian clothes. I already had Indian food for the party, and there were like a few things off, like my hair.
Yeah.
So those kind of moments, feeling, I think in the initial phases, I felt like I wanted to be accepted at almost any cost, I would say, because I was really quite deeply immersed in the community, and I really wanted to learn Hindi. So I had told my family, I'm only going to be calling you like once a month on these I would have the little calling card and like type it into my phone on my little whatever, and like call them once a month. So I was really trying to learn Hindi, and I really was very focused on my work and my career, and I kind of just dug myself into that world. After a few years, I think once I met Abhishek, and obviously he needed to see the real me if we were going to have a relationship. So being in a relationship with him I think I was able to work through a lot of those things. I'm not going to be like the ideal Indian woman in every way. And even Indian women are like the ideal Indian woman in every way. And I don't need to feel bad about that. Even though like being in a relationship with an Indian too, there's a lot of pressure of like, becoming the good daughter-in-law or fitting into a certain standard. What was that going to look like for me? And then my third phase, I think, was moving back to India, and then again having all these same pressures of being a mother, having a baby here, having kids in school, running a household, working, being a working parent. These have all been different dynamics of being a daughter-in-law in the midst of all of these dynamics.
Yeah.
All of those things have brought up some of those feelings and insecurities, and I've had to reassess those things constantly. Even yesterday, I had somebody say something which like triggered something in me.
Right.
This guy, I was at an office, and I was just doing the hi, hello, and happy Holi, whatever. I had mentioned something about, there's cooking going on, or how did you celebrate and how did I celebrate? We were just talking to each other, and he said, did you make anything? I said, yeah, I made this one thing. And then he kind of put this comment in here, almost as I felt it was like a direct comparison. He's like, Indian women are very skilled multitaskers in the kitchen. And I said, yeah, they really are. I've learned a lot. Yeah. But I felt like that was a comparison.
Yeah.
Those things, sometimes they hit you and you're like, I'm going to really not be insecure right now.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to let that bother me.
Yeah.
Because what he said is true. Indian women are amazing multitaskers in the kitchen, and Whether I am or not, it really shouldn't matter because there shouldn't need to be a comparison.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. This actually kind of leads me on to the next thing I want to talk. This feeling of wanting to embrace the culture, but feeling judged for it almost. You said a quote in one of your previous podcasts about I fell in love with India before I fell in love with an Indian, and it's something that really resonated with me because before I even met Deepan, I loved Indian classical music and I was really interested in Indian culture, but I felt embarrassed or ashamed to I suppose really delve into it for fear of what people would think because it's not my culture, I'm not from there. It's funny because even though now I'm married to an Indian, it's still kind of that feeling of people kind of judging you, or if I'm learning Hindi or Malayalam or singing Hindi songs or whatever it is, that you're almost met sometimes with a judgment from people that don't understand why we love the culture. So did you ever deal with feelings like that? And did it change after you got married, or do you still deal with that?
Yes, all the time. It's changed over time. I think in my beginning phases, there were times where I felt maybe that I was irresponsible in the way that I was engaging with Indian culture. My vision was short-sighted, right? My goal was just to learn the language and be able to fit into a community as myself and do my job. And I accomplished that goal. Sometimes I wouldn't let go of that goal in other circumstances. There would be times where I was in a setting, some Indians, mix of Hindi-speaking Indians and non-Hindi-speaking people. It might have been the South Indian, it might have been another American. And I just was so set on practicing Hindi that I would just want to practice Hindi.
Yeah.
And not necessarily read the environment of maybe other people are feeling bad that we're all talking in Hindi right now and maybe we should switch to English or maybe this or that. So I think there have actually been times where I wasn't as careful or responsible. So I probably deserved that judgment,
right?
To be honest. Now I'm still definitely working through this as a person who's been living in and out of India for 15 years, is some people won't ever understand. They see my face, they think I got off the plane yesterday. Fine. I'm at the point, and I'll probably reach the point soon where more of my life will have been spent in a lot of my formative years were in India, my early 20s. I relate to a lot of things that people would never understand that I actually relate to.
Yeah.
And that's okay. They're not going to understand that about me. And I just basically have committed myself to knowing that I'm going to be misunderstood over and over and over, and that's okay. And sometimes you can explain yourself, and sometimes you just don't have to.
Yeah.
And I definitely think, and this is the gong that I bang over and over again, is that I think language learning is a huge help in this.
Yeah.
Because you navigate some of these nuances. Once you've navigated through the language, you've navigated a lot of nuances, and I think people see that.
Yeah.
So I think people are less quick to criticize if they're like, oh my gosh, she's actually taken the time to learn the language, to learn how to live and how to respectively live in India. I think what people would ultimately just figure out about you. So I guess sometimes I just let that kind of sit there and speak for itself and not have to defend myself too much.
Moving on to, you're speaking a lot about kind of your experience learning Hindi, and this is something else I want to touch on. You did an immersion course, was it? Is that kind of how you learned, or and also what for you it's probably similar to why I would want to learn Malayalam, but what are the reasons you wanted to learn Hindi? What was the process of you learning Hindi?
I do have several episodes about this where I go really in depth, and you may have probably heard those already, Nicola, but if other people want to check those out, I have several episodes where I talk about how I learned Hindi, why I learned Hindi, the process of learning. On the website, I also have a bunch of recommendations of people who are offering different courses and products and services that I know personally and I've talked to. I've listed all those on my website it's invisibleindia.com/offers. So that's there. So I had to throw that plug in there to support my Indian creatives who are offering amazing stuff.
Yeah, and there really is so much amazing resources out there, so.
Yeah. So my experience was, living in India and being immersed and basically practicing every single day. In short, we all know, immersion is the best way to learn any language.
Yeah.
But if you can't do immersion, I would say second best would be finding a tutor. Third best would be taking a class. Fourth would be books or videos or audio recordings that you can listen to. So, and then I also, the apps are there, but like, I personally really think that like having it come out of your mouth is really, when there's another person that's going to talk back to you, is really important.
Yeah, definitely.
So,
Yeah, I began my Malayalam like last year, off and on, but
yeah.
I do find it
Uh-huh.
difficult. So I kind of went to Hindi and I started using Duolingo. But yeah,
Uh-huh.
speaking it out, so it's so easy to just, goes out of your mind kind of as soon as you finish the exercise or whatever,
And those two languages are so different from each other. Good job. Hats off to you for diving into that, because there's really there's very, very little commonality between the two. The Sanskrit based, but like it's so different, wildly different.
Yeah. Yeah, I really love that, I want to learn Malayalam because that's what my in-laws speak, and that's their native tongue. So, and I want to be able to teach our kids that as well, for them to learn it. But
Yeah.
I always just love the sound of Hindi as well. I think it's such a beautiful language as well. And I listen to a lot of, like Hindi music and Bollywood movies. So that kind of made me want to learn in that sense. But yeah, I'm trying to focus on just one and just Malayalam now. So
Yeah.
but thank God there's really good resources out there like Nicola-ki-duniya and people like that who are really um, making resources for it, because it's really hard to find resources. Yeah, I just wanted to talk as well about, I know you're teaching your kids Hindi. This is something I think a lot about, when I have kids and how will they feel being multicultural, regardless of where we're living. And just wondering how that process for them is, do they enjoy learning it, or how do you balance kind of it with something they want to do, but also something you want them to learn?
Yeah. There's so many different angles of where I could go with this, but we've never like forced our kids to be Indian.
Yeah.
Or trying to force them into a little box of doing this or doing that. They have to do or have to do this. Some things they have to do. Like there are certain realities of life here you just have to adjust to. And so, for example, you need to learn how to eat your food properly. You need, with your hands or with whatever you have available to you. Like that's just been their reality from the beginning. So it wasn't necessarily moving to India changed that. Our son's first food was like khichdi and kheer and stuff like that. So it wasn't a change for him moving to India, but there are things which they have to do properly in both cultures. When it comes to the language, I would say that we have intentionally sent our kids to local schools so they can just kind of understand more what it means to be Indian. American culture is so dominant across the world. They don't have to work hard to learn what it means to be American.
Yeah.
They don't have to try to be American. It just is very natural. It's very easy. Getting them to really enjoy Indian things, again, I don't force it, but things that they do enjoy, I try to encourage them. With the language specifically, our son is both, and now daughter too, are both in school and they have to learn Hindi it's a subject in the class. With the reading and writing and all that, that's something that's required for them in school. And we just try to keep that up. We try to encourage them. And even when we are in the US, we practice doing that together and try to get fun resources for them that they can enjoy doing it. So yeah, it's something we encourage, and but again, we don't force it. They see that we're interested, the kids see we're interested, and it's kind of a necessity for them here if they want to communicate. So
Yeah, of course, yeah.
that's how we've let it be. Is I don't answer for them when people are speaking to them. It's like you got to answer for yourself.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Ah, great. It's great.
Let them out, throw them out there a little.
It is a big world. Yeah, just the last question I wanted to talk about is kind of to do with family dynamic with in-laws, and I know that this can be there can be a lot of expectations and pressure on, you know, being a son or daughter-in-law, marrying into an Indian family, especially as a foreigner. Um, I am lucky in my case that, you know, my in-laws are very open-minded, very accepting and loving, and there hasn't been any pressures. But I'm curious, when you were living in the States and you're far from them, and now that you're around them, you know, you're close. Have the expectations changed because you're there, or would you say, you know, how has that changed?
Oh, it's changed a lot. I think they actually changed their expectations when they came and met me in the US and saw that, you know, I would go to the gym and I would drive all over the place. I would, you know, I would go visit my girlfriends for a weekend and leave my husband by himself to fend for himself and with food. Like, those are things that in their context, again, other cities, other places in India, people will do this, no problem. But we're in a more traditional society here in Bihar,
Right.
where women don't do those things as much. Some do, some don't. Many don't. So for them, it was an adjustment just to see, oh, this is how it is here. There's nothing wrong with her. She's actually doing what other women do here.
Yeah.
Fine. Our son is okay with it. They're happy. We're okay with it. Fine. They just saw that I was leaning into them. I enjoy learning a lot of Indian things, doing things that they want to do, spending time with them, taking them places, and they were totally fine with that. Moving here, it was then my turn to adjust, seeing the context. How do things work here? Some of those things I can still do once I earn the trust of the people in the neighborhood, right? Of, you know, the people realize I'm not a lousy mother and I'm not just, you know, careless and leaving my kids, and something bad happens, then it's just on other people. I'm responsible. People saw that, and I think they were able to advocate for me in that way. But yeah, expectations definitely changed. I mean, a lot of the small little things that I would normally do, like, you know, make tea in the evenings for them, or, you know, bring food over, share food, make sure that they had good medical care when they're sick. Mm-hmm. Those are all things I was doing in the US anyway. It's just it looks different here.
Yeah.
And just fitting into the context here, I think the one thing that probably has changed the most is that here, people care a lot about what other people think in the community. So I have to be mindful of that when I'm coming and going we don't live in the same house. We live close by each other. So when I'm coming and going, what are people thinking? I can't go over in my gym clothes with my, you know, sweaty t-shirt or something. I need to change before I go over there, because people don't know I just came from the gym. These old grandmas and aunties, they don't know that.
Yeah.
And they don't know that in the gym, every other woman is also wearing the same thing as I was. They just see that I'm roaming around in a t-shirt and sweaty clothes, which, again, other cities, people do this, not in our city. Right. So I'm sure people have accused me on my podcast of being, what was it, the exact quote, outdated stereotypes about India. I'm like, oh dear. Oh honey. First of all, there's not one India. There are many Indias.
Yeah.
The India that you know about, that you grew up in Canada or wherever you grew up, and you think that, you know, the world is India is all like Bangalore. No, it is not. Let me tell you. There are still places that are very traditional. Okay, don't forget it. So anyway, side note. But yes, in our community, women don't do that. So women do not run outside. Women do not walk around, go on a morning walk just by themselves in the neighborhood. You go in a group. You go to the park. There are certain things. So just being aware what people could say.
Yeah.
There was even an instance the other day where someone that I was going to do an interview with on the podcast, we had suggested, you know, how are we going to meet up? How are we going to do it? This guy was in town, and I'm like, I really want to interview you, but I really can't figure out a way to make this happen personally. I cannot go sit with you at a restaurant by ourselves.
Yeah.
Like, there's just no way to do it. We can't go sit out in like a park together and do a recording. That's super inappropriate. People will think badly about that. So this is not Delhi. This is not Mumbai. So anyway, I ended up having just him come to the house.
All right. Yeah.
With my husband also here, and like, that's the best way we could do it. So I have to operate within those paradigms.
Yeah. And it's good you're talking about that. I think a lot of people do think that, everything just must be so kind of modern now, and, that there's still a lot of that in India, in the rural parts. And it's good to hear as well, because it could be complete, if I go to Tamil Nadu, it could be completely different, a different experience. And, just depending on where you are in India. So, yeah, definitely something to note for people who are interested in going to India or moving there, living there for a while. So. No,
but I think that the life here is enriched by these stories and examples. So that's why I shared so many random examples with you, but
no, it's
about our lives here.
So it's so insightful, like, someone who hasn't got to go yet to India, and it's really great to hear kind of what I could expect, and your experiences, as a foreigner being there. So it's great.
Yeah, well, thanks for all your great questions and your just inquisitive nature, and just the way that you are leaning in and asking great questions. I think this is kind of the kind of dialogues that we should be having with each other as women who are engaging in Indian culture in different ways. And there are many different ways to do it. There's no one right way to do this. And so,
yeah, of course,
I appreciate your journeying with me.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on here and taking the time. And yeah, hopefully we could meet up in the future, and someday when I do get to go to India, and yeah, it'd be great.
It would be wonderful.
Yeah.